Good evening, guys. Now, I very rarely want to be serious in this part of the show for a minute, but there's a first for everything, and I usually am out of material at this point of the year. So I'd like to give my respect and gratitude to Rory McIlroy for winning the 2025 Masters and completing the Grand Slam. The most insane round of golf I've ever seen in my entire life. There were crazy moments that we thought Rory would choke completely. There were moments when he made the shots of his life and everything in between. The sixth ever member of the career Grand Slam Club and the first ever member of the winning at Augusta when scoring four bogeys in the Masters Tournament Club. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz. I'm a much less consistent person than McElroy was even on Sunday. So you take that in mind, gentlemen.
I'm Jay Kaplan, and I will give my props to Mr. McElroy at the end of the show.
I figured that was the Twitter post, but it was insane, Mo. It was insane.
But congrats, congrats, congrats.
Uh, I'm Anthony Strait, and everyone, congratulations. Congratulations to Sam Rosen, who called his final Rangers game
Yes.
tonight. Happy retirement. Wish all of the very best, and thank you for all the memories.
Thank you very
Absolutely.
much. We're gonna miss you, Sam.
I'm going to have to take that out of my ending now. This is the NBA playoff edition of On the Sports Lines. So, like, I got a lot of other stuff I can do there too. So, just 10 days ago, we crowned the college basketball national champions. Congrats to our friend Nisa Petrilli of the Florida Gators. Not necessarily like she's a member of the team, but she is an alum.
Hmm.
Now we get to the playoffs in the NBA, a league with older players that get played slightly more than those college student athletes, and they actually have more stability now. So who knew? We'll talk Knicks, the true contenders, and the best matchups of the first round. But I would advise you to go to our X page at On the Sports Lines, our Facebook page at facebook.com/On the Sports Lines, and our YouTube page, youtube.com/On the Sports Lines. Subscribe to all of them, and you can continue to do that talking that you don't want us to do for 95 minutes to 120 minutes. The New York Knicks are back into the playoffs for a third consecutive season and four out of the last five seasons. However, despite the one game bump from the last season in record to 51 wins in that regular season, they have an 0-10 record against the NBA's Big Three. Who is the Big Three, you ask? We'll talk about them later. The inconsistency of the past few months, and we have Knicks fans who may be more skeptical of a first round loss than a possible championship. For the Knicks' first round opponent, that would be the Detroit basketball Pistons. They hope that that whole loss fear comes to fruition. That series starts on Saturday. Let's look at three aspects of this series between the Knicks and the Pistons. Is it the mid 90s again, guys? Guess it
Yeah.
is. Today,
Hope not.
uh, well, you're gonna get better scoring in the mid 90s. Anthony, Jalen Brunson missed a month right around the home stretch of the season, but in our Star Watch tonight, he'll need to come up big, though he just came back to the court less than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and when he came back, I mean, it's obvious he's had some good performances in those games. Especially the final four games. He had a couple of 26 points per game, 26 point game performances. But all that was sandwiched in between two very subpar performances. Clearly Bronson needs to get his rhythm back and get it back soon. For the season, he's a guy who averaged 26 a game, but on the three rebounds and seven assists, but shooting 48% from the field. And also, you think about Jalen Brunson when he meets the Knicks, it's definitely clutch time. And for the second straight season, he led the league in time of possession at 8.6 per game. And his clutch rate is at 42.4%, which is the highest among 178 players who played at least 50 clutch minutes during the 24-25 regular season. And he's a clutch player of the year candidate, 27-point showings. Like I said, in between those inefficient 50-point efforts. But in the final four games, he averaged 21 points and five assists. Clearly, the Knicks losing three out of four to end this season is not exactly a recipe for success as far as Knicks fans feeling the optimism of a possible deep playoff run. On top of the fact that two of those losses came at the hands of the Eastern Conference elite, the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers, especially. And in both games, the Knicks had decent sized leads and managed to lose in both circumstances. And in both of those cases, the Celtics and the Cavs are missing star players. So that's kind of another double whammy if you're a Knicks fan going into the postseason. And now you have a Detroit Pistons team who had taken 3 out of 4 from the Knicks in the regular season. And when you looked at Jalen Brunson's performances against against the Pistons, give me just a second. Yeah, they he averaged a little under 25 a game during the regular season against Detroit. They didn't really do much of getting the ball out of his hands. His usage also for Jalen Brunson is about 31.8%, which is the 5th highest against any opponent over four regular season games. Key note though for the Pistons, Azor Thompson missed 2 of those meetings, and generally would draw the Jalen Brunson assignment. For the Knicks, they need the Jalen Brunson that we saw in the last 2 playoff first rounds. 2023 against Cleveland, he averaged 24 points a game. The Knicks won that series of 5 games. And of course, they definitely would love to have the Jalen Brunson that we saw last season against Philadelphia. Sorry, Jay. In the first round, when he basically put on a first round performance for the Angels, averaging 35 a game, and leading the Knicks to a 6-game series victory there. They're going to need Jalen Brunson to really be back to the Jalen Brunson we saw prior to the ankle injury that cost him a month of the season. And you saw the Knicks kind of looking discombobulated as well, when they try to work him back into the lineup, into the course of things. But now you also had to work him back in, not just with Carthy Towns and the rest of the starting lineup, but also a returning Mitchell Robinson, who had just came back around the time Jalen Brunson was injured. So Tom Thibodeau had a lot to juggle as far as rest, as far as keeping guys healthy. And obviously, there's always been a complaint about minutes with Tom Thibodeau led teams going into the postseason. But for Jalen Brunson, it was important that he play and try to get the rest out as fast as possible. Because the Detroit Pistons are a physical team. They have Dennis Schroeder there, who is one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. You got to know he's going to draw Jalen Brunson's assignment. But one of the things that I did notice down the stretch of the regular season is that teams are now targeting Jalen Brunson defensively, particularly on the pick and roll, and trying to get Brunson caught up in mismatches. So that is somewhat of a concern if you're Tom Thibodeau, as far as how do you cover up for Jalen Brunson? Obviously, being undersized and being somewhat of a defensive liability, he has been taken out late in games for defensive reasons at some points during the regular season. And you gotta understand that Detroit is going to single him out when they have the ball, particularly late in games. So Jalen Brunson, he's got to give the Knicks everything he has offensively. That's the obvious one. But he has to be 100% and be able to hold his own defensively as well. Because if he's going to struggle defensively, now you have a situation where it was pretty much 5-on-4. And Jay, Rabbi, we know the Knicks' defensive struggles this season has just been kind of off and on and in and out. If Brunson is going to be singled out, it makes the possibility of an upset a lot more possible. And if you're a Knicks fan right now, this is the first round opponent you did not want to have. And I talked to Rabbi about this. I haven't met one Knicks fan yet who said they wanted to play the Detroit Pistons in round 1, because this is the one interesting matchup that if there's going to be a first round upset, you're kind of looking at this one.
By default, you are, just because of the fact that the 4-5 series isn't really considered an upset to anybody. But the funny thing is about the Pistons, and we're not going to really talk about this too much because it's not. They are probably one of the. I mean, they don't show aspects of the bad boy teams from the 1990s, but they surely will fight and grind out games. And considering Brunson is the walking wounded, and we've seen what this team is in terms of crunch time without Jalen Brunson, you're going to want to have Jalen Brunson on that court, especially as the fourth quarter comes in. But that's kind of Captain Obvious, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but I would say this, though, for a team that won 14 games all of last season to be where they are now, I mean, normal, it would be an upset without question, considering
of course it would be an upset. It'd be the less amount of the upset, but yeah. Absolutely. We'll talk about that team in just a second. Jay,
Mhm.
X factors are always very important, and our X factor is OG Anunoby. So many things he can do for this Knickerbockers team come postseason time.
Yeah, I mean, we know what he brings on the defensive side of the ball. He's considered a tier one perimeter defender. But the reason Anunoby is my X factor is because the Knicks' ability to keep him as productive on the offensive side of the ball as he was while Brunson was out with his ankle injury. He's pretty much the number one option during that time. No disrespect, Cat. Could be what gets the Knicks past Detroit and into the second round. In those 15 games that Brunson missed, 9 of which were against teams that made the playoffs, if you include teams in the play-in round, Anunoby stepped up his offensive production, averaging 23.2 points per game on 47.6% from the floor, 39.2 from three on 6.8 per game, and 87.2 from the stripe at 5.2 a game, along with 5.3 boards, 2.7 assists, 2.1 steals in 36.2 minutes. The Knicks went 9-6 in those games. In the 3 games that he and Brunson played together once the point guard returned, Anunoby averaged 20 points a game even, 50% from the floor, 36.4 from three on 7.3 per game, 50% from the stripe on 2.7 per game, with 6 boards, 2.7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 37.3 minutes per game as the Knicks went 1-2, beating the Suns and then losing to the Celtics and the Cavs again, dropping their record against the NBA's top 3 teams to that 0-10 mark that the rabbi mentioned. A big reason Anunoby was able to raise his offensive production during that time that Brunson was out was an increase in trips to the foul line. This is no small development in his game. In the first 7 seasons of his career, Anunoby's free throw attempts per 36 minutes was 2.1. That rate continued at the start of this season as he averages 2.5 free throw attempts per 36 minutes over the first 53 games he played. But over the final 21 games, 15 of which coincided with Brunson being out, that free throw attempt per 36-minute rate went up to 4.4. Some very specific additions to Anunoby's offensive profile led to that increase in trips to the line. They included an increase in drives to the basket, attacking mismatches in the post, and adding a gather step move to his repertoire. All of these increased his ability to draw fouls on a more regular basis. The increase in free throw attempts led to an increase in scoring during this late stretch as he averaged 22.9 points per game over those final 21. Anunoby was relatively quiet offensively, and he shot pretty badly from the floor and beyond the arc in New York's 2 recent losses to the Celtics and the Cavs. 14 points per game on 35.5% from the floor, 14.3 from beyond the arc on 7 per game, 50% on free throws at 4 per game. And the 3 games he played against Detroit in the regular season were around his Knicks average, 16 points a game, 48.7% from the floor, 33.3 from beyond the arc, 83.3 from the line. But again, reduction in the more to his usual free throw attempts per game, just 2. So if the Knicks are going to finally live up to their postseason expectations, which are not only getting past the Pistons, but likely both the Cavs and the Celtics, they'll need OG Anunoby to continue the aggressiveness we saw on offense from him this last month and change.
It's interesting to see what this next season has become, just in terms of I think a lot of people either overthought that this team could challenge with the Celtics and Cavs, but they've kind of underperformed at so many different situations. And I do like what this team is when you don't see Brunson on the floor. But again, when it comes to the final 5 minutes of the game, that's been the huge problem in my book, because Brunson is really the only initiator, it seems to be, on this team, whether you like it or not. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so let's do some math. 14, the number of wins that the Pistons had last year, times 3 plus 2. It's an insane math problem that gets you to 30 plus win improvement from last year. And you can pick almost any player from this team that has had a good season, because almost everybody has it. Dennis Schroeder, Jalen Duren. But of course, I think the Captain Obvious pick, just because of the fact that he has done some amazing things in Madison Square Garden, is the number 1 pick of 2021, that being Cade Cunningham.
Yes, sir.
Cunningham has had an outstanding season, and let's just get the numbers out there. 26 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds a game. And the Pistons are back in the playoffs for the first time in 6 years. What a year for Detroit, by the way. The Lions are one of the best teams in the NFL, although they had the playoff disappointment. The Tigers made it back to the playoffs for the first time in 12 years, breaking the longest drought of missing the playoffs in Major League Baseball. And now you have Cunningham, who is insane this year versus the Knicks. 30 points, 8 assists per game, and had shooting splits of 56% from the field and 52% from long range. The three things that the Pistons do well is shoot the three, defend you as hard as they can to be annoying, and Cade Cunningham. Just Cade Cunningham is number 3 on that list. And Cunningham had 2 monster games at Madison Square Garden, including a 36-point game just about a week ago. That actually wasn't the Garden, that was at the, but he's had 2 monster games this year at Madison Square Garden. He scored 36 points in each matchup in New York, including the last one a week ago in Detroit. But he made 50% of his shots every game that the Pistons played against the Knicks this year, and can't really guard him. And I think all of a sudden, he's going to be seeing two to three defenders almost every time he touches the ball, pretty much immediately, until somebody can prove they are the second shooter on this team, which may not be that easy. But again, one of the things that the Pistons have done very well this season against the Knicks is shoot the three. So you're going to not play him one-on-one, and you're going to have to see what happens. Now, in 9 games versus the Knicks in his career, 25 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds. That's his average. That's insane. He is a guy who is been pretty good in his first few years in the NBA, but has now taken it up to a different level this year now that he has the established talent. And one of the interesting things about it is this team is coached by the same guy who had one of the worst series of his coaching career that probably started to lead to his downfall in JB Bickerstaff back in 2023. Now he's with the Pistons in 2025. Cade Cunningham is the stir that's going to have to make this drink of the Pistons get past the Knicks. Is the straw that will have to stir the drink that will get past this first round series for the Knicks. There's not too many people in the league who can do that in any situation, but the way Cade Cunningham has played this year, he's been a top 20 player. And again, with the Knicks just being such I would say, diminished defensive team from where they were in 2023-24, they're a little more off. Cunningham can do it. So if Cade Cunningham is seeing single coverage at any point this series, that's not by design. The Knicks have made one big honking mistake.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah. Also, a name to look out for is Malik Beasley, and we know the next 3-point defensive struggle.
He's shooting, by the way. He's shooting the second best of any player from 3 this season. The only player who shot more. I don't remember the better shot more, but.
And go back to earlier this season, hit a big time 3 down the stretch to beat the Knicks in one of those meetings at Madison Square Garden. He's certainly not afraid at the moment. So that's a guy that you definitely have to look out for if you're the Knicks, as far as not just stretching the court on 3, but being a possible second scorer.
To be fair, I will say this. No one's really said this the whole entire season. The regular season is 82 games long, and there's not any teams outside of the 3 big ones this year that has showed consistent effort through those 82 games. The regular season and postseason are 2 totally different things. So you could almost throw the Pistons 3-1 record out the window against the Knicks, in my opinion. And hell, you might throw out that 0-10 record against the top 3 a little out the window. You don't be surprised if the series goes long. But again, the Knicks have been a little off for a while. So we'll see what happens Saturday night at 6 p.m. Eastern when that series begins. The first round begins on Saturday, and for the other 4 teams this play-in week, that's the Kings and the Bulls and 2 others, TBD tomorrow, they're going to enjoy their little 1% chance of getting Cooper Flag in the lottery and not getting it and being disappointed. Oh. But with 16 teams ready to go for Sir Larry O'Brien's crown jewel, there are 3 first-round series that we're excited about who have star players on both sides, because that's what the NBA is about. It's about the stars. Yeah. And the best first-round series out of all of them is the one between the last 2 Western Conference Finals runners-up. That would be the Lakers and the Timberwolves. And Unfortunately for Anthony Edwards, he's going to get a very familiar friend who we saw at last year's Western Conference Finals to have to look at. So, Ant, tell us about those two stars from the Lakers and Wolves.
Yeah, for the Timberwolves, it's obviously Anthony Edwards, and
Yeah.
in 27 career postseason games in the last few years, he's averaged 27 points a game, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. And obviously, his ability to elevate the moment. Remember his performance in the first round last year against Phoenix, and Anthony Edwards is obviously the catalyst for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But this season, he's actually become more of a 3-point threat, in part because he's had to take more 3-pointers. Sometimes out of necessity, and sometimes because, well,
He
pretty
wants
much doing
to.
every day. He just pretty much
He wants to.
I mean, I think we've seen Anthony Edwards in a couple of the Netflix documentaries. His personality matches his game. He can he plays on a high level. His personality is also on a high level as well. And I'm not talking about, I'm just talking about he's a really upbeat personality in general. But he's shooting nearly 40% clip, which is pretty good, considering Anthony Edwards the attempts that he's taken this season. He also we know he's good at attacking the basket, and he is pretty much the guy for the Timberwolves that they're going to get past the first round. On the other side is Luka Doncic, and I mean we saw what he did against Minnesota last year in the conference finals, leading the Mavericks to the finals. The game winner over Rudy Gobert in game 2 of that series a year ago. But since he's joined the Lakers, he's pretty much been their team leader in almost every statistic. He's led them in points, he's led them in rebounds, he's led them in assists. I mean, I think if LeBron James, you're kind of happy to take a secondary role where you have the barely 26-year-old leading the charge. But here's a key stat that I found interesting. Since joining the Lakers, the first 28 healthy regular season games, he's averaged 28 points a game on 438, 379, 71 shooting splits. That's obviously shooting percentage, 3 points, and free throw percentage. A little over 8 rebounds a game, 7.5 assists, and 1.6 steals a night. And he's going to need to replicate that. And it's going to be interesting how both teams play each other's star players. I mean, Anthony Edwards and even Mike Conley's teammate pointed out this season, he struggled when teams sent double teams out to him and basically crash and harm him defensively. In the case of Luka Doncic, how does the Timberwolves play that pick and roll? Obviously, you saw Rudy Gobert. He does have the ability to play guards, but it clearly didn't matter when it came to Luka Doncic. And now, who else do you send out to him? As far as defensively, Luka Doncic, his defensive weaknesses have been pretty noted. There's no Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford to back him up this time around if he just be off the dribble. So it's going to be in the Lakers' lack of size, and I said this earlier. It's going to come back and catch up to them at some point. You just wonder if it's going to be this series or further on the postseason. But two interesting players that I do want to quickly point out that was part of that Karl Anthony Towns trade. Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. And obviously, DiVincenzo had the foot injury, was inconsistent earlier this year. Julius Randle really was inconsistent this season, and we know his playoff struggles in 2021 and 2023 with the Knicks respectively. Last year did not play; he was injured during that Knicks playoff run. If those two can even play up to the level of this DiVincenzo, if he can replicate what he did last season for the Knicks and helping them become the 2 seed and definitely as far as 3-point shooting, and Julius Randle could be anywhere near the all NBA player we saw when he was with the Knicks, then it's going to be a very difficult matchup for the Lakers. But if it's falling on Anthony Edwards, this series can end in 5 games very quickly. I mean, you look at the Lakers, between Luka Doncic, between LeBron James, obviously, but you also have Austin Reeves, who's become a reliable those scorer and another playmaker who can create off the dribble. It's a very interesting matchup when you look at the fact that you have 2 star players who aren't the greatest as far as well, Anthony Edwards is a very good defensive player, but you have one Luka Doncic who is very weak on the defensive side. But the Lakers shooting, particularly the 3-point shooting, has just improved so greatly because of his ability to open up looks for other teammates. This is going to be a really good matchup. Uh, I would be shocked if this series ended suited in six or seven games because I think these two teams do kind of mash up in a strange way. Uh, and this is the one matchup where either the Lakers lack of size hurt them on the defensive end, or maybe it doesn't because Rudy Gobert is not a center, an offensive threat that you need a double team. So there's so many. This is a really an interesting chess match that it's going to be fun to watch starting Saturday evening and to see it play out throughout the next couple of weeks.
And you talked about, interesting stats with Luka, and here's something that jumped out at me. And like we all know that like the Dallas team he left is different than the Lakers team he came to. But here's what's interesting to me. He played 22 games in Dallas, 28 points a game, 8.3 rebounds, 7.8 assists. He played 28 games with the Lakers, 28.2 points per game, 8.1 rebounds, 7.5 assists a game. It's kind of weird to me that like his stats are basically the same across both teams, even though the makeup of those teams are different. That just goes to show you. Nico Harrison can talk all he wants about defense wins championships.
Oh boy, less is more.
I don't know, man.
Let's talk this more, please.
Luka's offense looks like it could definitely help the Lakers win a championship. I don't know, man.
Still baffling, although Dallas does have a chance to at least make it to the playoffs with a win tomorrow night. By the way, don't sleep on the fact that the one thing in this Lakers series that it's going to be really interesting, and it's what you see every year with Rudy Gobert. Gobert would get him off of his comfort zone and have to get him to defend someone in space. Gobert almost becomes unplayable, and we've seen that from time to time again. You kind of glossed it over a little bit with what Luka did last year versus the Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals. It might happen again here, so we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how often the T-Wolves are forced to go to a smaller lineup that moves Randall to the 5 because Gobert in certain matchup situations is not playable.
And by the way, Randall said this week this is the best he feels like he's had to play for a title for a while. Pew, pew, pew. Shots fired, of course, because Julius Randle is still probably hella better, but whatever. All right. We're going to talk about the Nuggets disappointed on the coaching side at the end of this show, Jay, but we're still talking about their playoff matchup versus the surprising 2024-25 Clippers. And I see you avoided the beard on the Clippers side, but on the Nuggets side, it only starts with the guy who averaged a fucking triple-double this year. No big deal. Just doing it under the radar. Not even the favorite for MVP. Nikola Jokic just does wonders, Jay.
Yeah, I said it on our Final Four preview, but it's even more relevant for the NBA playoffs. And Rabbi, you touched on it just a few minutes ago. Your stars need to play like stars for your team to have a chance to advance. And the choices here reflect that. And we will start with the West number 4 seed, the Denver Nuggets. Jokic is the captain obvious choice for the Nuggets and would in any given season, as literally everything Denver does on offense goes through him. But it's even more heightened this season as Jokic became the 3rd player overall, joining current teammate Russell Westbrook and NBA Hall of Famer Oscar Robertson, but the first center in NBA history to average a triple-double for an entire season. Included in those numbers are a career high with a 61-point triple-double game, which is the highest scoring triple-double game in NBA history, as well as the association's first 30-20-20 game. The 3-time NBA MVP was responsible for 56 points per game this season, the highest mark in the NBA. That means 46% of the points scored by the NBA's 4th best offense this season was directly attributable to Jokic. Hell, if you just go by the minutes the Denver big man was on the floor, the Nuggets had the best offense in NBA history this year. Jokic is the only player to ever place in the top 3 in points, rebounds, assists in the same season, and he was top 3 in all 3 categories. Oh, and just for fun, he also finished tied for 2nd in the NBA in steals per game at 1.8. Something to watch with Jokic is Denver's production in his minutes on and off the floor. This is the fourth straight season that Jokic led the NBA in on-off differential. The Nuggets are 19.8 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor, plus 10.5, than they were with him off the floor, minus 9.3. Granted, Jokic's minutes will likely be increased in the playoffs, but he can't play all 48 every game. So the pressure will be on the other Nuggets to keep the team afloat when Jokic sits. And that's where guys like Michael Porter Jr., 18.2 points per game, Christian Braun, 15.4 points per game, and especially Jamal Murray, 21.4 points per game, come in. Denver has less depth this season than in playoff runs past, so a lot will be put on these three offensively in support of Jokic, and how they perform will be a huge determining factor in how far the Nuggets go. That being said, the matchup that could very well determine this series is Jokic versus Ivica Zubac. Clippers center had a career year this season. He averaged 16.8 points per game, 12.6 boards, and 2.7 assists, all career highs, plus his standard 1.1 blocks. He's become the anchor of the Clippers defense and will be the primary defender on Jokic for most of this series. Check out this next-gen stat from ESPN Research. Since Jokic entered the league in 2015-16, there have been 20 players who are the closest defender on him for over 100 shots. Zubac is the only one of the 20 to hold Jokic below 45% shooting from the floor in both the regular season and playoffs. Jokic averaged 28.3 points and 10 rebounds in the three regular season games against the Clippers, which is kind of below his 29.6, 12.7 average against everyone else. But his 5.7 assists, he averaged 10.2 this year, were the lowest against any opponent this season, and a lot of that was because of Zubac. And over the last 2 years, Jokic has averaged 29 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists against the Clippers, but his 45.7% field goal shooting is his lowest against any opponent in that span. If Zubac can defend Jokic without the Clippers needing to send double teams and make Jokic work on the defensive end, that will be trouble for Jokic and the Nuggets. It'll be interesting to see how Jokic attacks this matchup. Will he take Zubac down low? Jokic led the NBA with 11 posts up per 100 possessions, but in the three regular season matchups against the Clippers, he posted up just 10 times total. I have to think that new/interim head coach Dave Adelman, who was the Clippers' offensive coordinator under Michael Malone, will look to increase that total. But I can also see Jokic looking to draw Zubac out to the perimeter. He was the fifth best spot-up shooter in the NBA. He shot a career-high 41.7% from three on 4.7 attempts per game, and he was the second best on all three-point shots from above the break. That could also lead to some really good opportunities for the Nuggets pick-and-pop game, which could then open up some good screening angles and cuts, which Jokic thrives on. He led the NBA in assists off screen actions and was second in assists off rim shots. And while it's not an official stat, Jokic also led the NBA in hockey assists, the pass that leads to the pass that results in the assist on the bucket. We all know that Nikola Jokic has a myriad of ways to destroy an opposing team, but the Nuggets need him to be at his triple-double best in this series if they are to advance to the second round. Now, as for the West number 5 seed, the Los Angeles Clippers, point guard James Harden would not be a wrong choice here, as he did carry the team for a large part of this season, playing 79 games, averaging 35.3 minutes per game, and leading the team in scoring at 22.8 a game and assists at 8.7 per game. But we all know that in the postseason, La La Land's other team will go only as far as Kawhi Leonard, their often injured 2-time Finals MVP forward, will take them. Leonard missed the first 34 games of the season, then played 37 of the final 48 starting on January 4th. The team went 26-11 in that stretch. He comes into the playoffs on one hell of a heater, as do the Clippers, having won 18 of their last 21 games, and they sport the NBA number 1 offense and number 1 defense since March 6th. That offense, with Leonard on the floor, put up 123.6 points per 100 possessions. In the Clippers' last 3 games of the regular season, Leonard averaged 42.3 minutes per game, shot 50.8% from the floor, 47.1% from 3 on 5.7 attempts per game, 84.6% from the stripe on 4.3 attempts per game, and averaged 27.7 points, 7.7 boards, and 4.7 assists. In the regular season finale on Sunday, which was basically a playoff game as the fifth seed was still in play, he scored 33 points while the Clippers outscored the Warriors by a game-high plus-minus of 17 points in the 47 minutes and 25 seconds that Leonard played. Overall, Leonard's minutes have steadily risen since his return from 24.2 in January, 31.4 in February, to 36.2 in March and April, including those 3 games where he played over 40 minutes. His production has risen along with it. Check out the numbers. January, 16.6 points, 4.3 boards, 2.4 assists on 49.3, 35.6, 82.4 shooting splits. In February, 17.8 points per game, 5.3 boards, 3.4 dimes, 42.1, 42.5, 73.1 shooting splits. March and April, 25.7 points per game, 7.1 boards, 3.4 assists on 52.6, 42.9, 83.3 shooting splits. Now, the Clippers have been smart about how they've ramped him up. Specifically, they've kept him out of back-to-back games as they went about getting him ready for the playoffs. Then it becomes about keeping him healthy during the playoffs, something that Leonard himself has said is the most important thing. He was limited to just 2 games in each of the Clippers' last 2 playoff series, and he would love to change that narrative that he's always injured. Due to his increase in time spent on the IL of late, we tend to forget that Leonard was a dominant playoff performer from 2016 through 2021. In 70 postseason games over that span, he averaged 28.4 points per game, 8.3 boards, 4.2 assists, and 2 steals on 50.9% from the floor, 38.9 from beyond the arc on 5.3 per game, 86.3 from the line on 7.7 attempts per game. He had an effective field goal percentage of 56.3. And when he's on the floor with Harden, Zubac, and Norman Powell, that 4-man unit has a net rating of plus 15.3, the highest of any Clippers 4-man unit that played at least 500 minutes together this season. The offensive skill sets of the other 3, Harden as facilitator, Zubac in the post, Powell giving them 21.8 points per game as the catch and shoot threat, play very well with Leonard's ability to score on ISOs from the perimeter. So expect to see a lot of that foursome playing together. Now, Leonard will likely get Aaron Gordon as his primary defender in this series. And Gordon has defended Leonard more than any opponent the Clippers have played since 2017. 690.1 possessions, counting both regular season and playoffs per stat head. Against all other defenders, Leonard has averaged 36 points per 100 possessions, but the Nuggets forward has done a solid job keeping Leonard somewhat in check, holding him to 22.2 points per 100 possessions. With that in mind, LA will no doubt look to run screening actions to get Leonard switched on to a lesser defender as he scores 48.9 points per 100 possessions against Murray, 74.1 points per 100 possessions against Jokic, and 37.1 points per 100 possessions against Porter Jr. The more chances the Clippers have to put Kawhi Leonard in ISO opportunities against a lesser defender, the better their chances of him putting up the type of numbers that got him 2 NBA Finals MVP awards. And they may need that type of performance from him to advance to the second round.
There's 15 points. There's 4 15-point scorers on this team. I don't even know if you mentioned Norman Powell, who is probably
21.8 game.
Yeah, 21.8 game. Leonard's the 3rd best scorer on this team. It's going to be very interesting. I honestly think, looking back at it, not sure what this team's identity is going to be in the postseason because there's a lot of cooks in this team. Mm-hmm. But talent-wise, and that's even including Ben Simmons, shockingly enough, this is probably the 2nd most talented team, top to bottom, of any team in this Western Conference.
And they're the hottest team in the NBA coming into the playoffs.
14 and 15 also at home with only a 2-point loss. The Intuit Dome is a very good place to play this year for the Clippers, and it's really good for LA having both of those teams being kind of at their best right now. Okay, so unfortunately, because Golden State and Houston wasn't solidified until Tuesday night, I have to take the scraps, and I have to take the Eastern Conference NBA TV special of the Indiana Pacers and Milwaukee Bucks. Going to be a good series, though, in my opinion. Going to be a good series.
Come on now.
It is. It is exactly that. But one thing we don't get to see a lot. The two stars here again. We talked about it before. Stars need to be stars, and the two players here are Captain Obvious on both sides because of the heart condition of Damian Lillard, who's going to miss the beginning of this series. It possibly could be the whole thing, but he's going to miss the beginning of this series. The Captain Obvious pick is hopefully for the Bucks a healthy Giannis Antetokounmpo. The last time he was playing in a healthy series was in 2022 against the Boston Celtics, and here are the numbers he had in that series: 33.9 points per game, 14.7 rebounds, 7.1 assists, one block, and one steal. And he basically played almost the entire game. Each time he played 40 minutes a game, 6 double-doubles, 1 triple-double, 3 40-point games, back-to-back games of at least 20 points and 20 rebounds, back-to-back games of 20 points and 20 rebounds in games 6 and 7. First player in the history of the NBA to have 200 points, 100 rebounds, and 50 assists in a single playoff series. Is that good? Is any of that actually good? I think it's pretty good.
Pretty damn good.
It's
pretty damn good.
So the 10 regular season
for government work, as you're fond of saying, Rabbi.
Yes. By the way, Lillard had thrombosis in the right calf. My apologies. In the 10 games that Giannis has played without him, in those 10 games, he's averaged 36 minutes a game, 31.5 points, 11.7 rebounds, 9.1 assists, 61.3 assists from the field, and hell, as a bonus, 67.5% from the free throw line. Yay! 7 double-doubles, 5 triple-doubles, and the first player to score 35 points, 20 assists, and pull down at least 15 rebounds in a game in that time. Now, Giannis is going to have to take advantage because he is going to be the best player on the court times 2 when the next best player on the court is Kyle Kuzma. It's a problem, but the Pacers don't really do a good job in the paint. They have Miles Turner on the court pretty much the entire season, but they're one of the worst teams in the league in the paint. And nobody was better in the paint this season than Giannis. 19.5 points per game in the paint, 58.2% on drive shooting. So he's efficient. In 4 games against the Pacers, Antetokounmpo averaged 30 points, 12.3 rebounds, 7.5 assists, and again, the typical 1.3 blocks and 1.3 steals per game, and also 64.9% from the field. Milwaukee was 3-1 this season against Indiana. And the final game, he went for 34 and 10 and 7 assists, and also 14 of 19 from shooting. Now, Antetokounmpo, as you might know, 8 40-point games in the playoffs, and of course, a 50-point game in the clincher in 2021. Now, Antetokounmpo and Lillard were big in the pick and roll this year. If Lillard ever comes back in this series, they had 21 pick and rolls per 100 possessions during the season altogether. That number dropped to 11.5. So there might be a little more attacking, hopefully, if they can do that. Now, I mentioned Tyrese Halliburton. We saw his up and downness last year against the Knicks. When he was good, he was really good. When he was bad, you didn't even know he was on the court. But in another great season with the Pacers, he averaged 18.6 points per game, 9.2 assists, 3.5 total rebounds, and still one of the top point guards pretty much in the league. It's not even a question. Led the league in assists last year and was better this year. He actually dropped his turnovers per game from 2.3 to 1.6. Now, the Pacers offense is one of the best units in the NBA, and there's going to be, spoiler alert, a lot of scoring in this postseason in this series. 15.3 points per game, though, in the beginning of the season, but then he got back to his average pretty much right after that slow start. 19.5 points per game, almost 50% shooting, 41.5% in the three-point range. Since the All-Star break, he is averaging 20.6 points per game, 53% shooting, 44% from three-point arc, and an 11 to 1.2 ratio of assists to turnovers. That's what you want from a big-time point guard. Let's be honest. This is going to be a series where Indiana is going to throw bodies at Milwaukee, and Giannis is going to have to be Giannis. I've always said this, and I know we were talking before about how Knicks fans didn't want to see Detroit. Even though Damian Lillard is not playing for Milwaukee, My feeling is the reason why Milwaukee didn't win against Miami in 2023 and didn't win against Indiana in 2024 in the first round is because they didn't have a healthy Giannis. They have a healthy Giannis now, and people forget Giannis is the straw that stirs the drink for the Milwaukee Bucks. It's not Damian Lillard, and seeing a healthy Giannis might push Milwaukee single-handedly past this series, but if Tyrese Halliburton can be Tyrese Halliburton and can get the rest of the team going, Indiana might win this one too. This is not, again, I joked around. This is your NBA TV Garden Variety series at certain points. I mean, the first game is airing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. That's your typical Shakey's game in the world of professional basketball. But this series could be a lot of fun considering these series haven't been the healthiest ones, but these two teams do not like each other and they will score on each other at will. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I'll add another point for Tyrese Halliburton. They're going to need Halliburton to be aggressive, and that's when the Pacers have been at their best. The 25-3 when he scored 20 points or more this season, and they may need that because Pascal Siakam has not been 100%, and he's led the team in scoring this season, dealing with a right elbow issue that kind of limited his minutes down the stretch. And you mentioned Damian Lillard. Who knows if he even plays at all in this series? But if he does,
I'd assume
no joke, guys.
Yeah, the blood.
Yeah, no, I assume he won't.
Dealing with like blood clots and then come on blood thinners. That's very risky. I would be shocked if he did come back at all in this first round, even the second round, because it's like you really got to be very careful when you had that kind of a health issue going on. But the pace this series it's going to come down to two superstars and the health, and obviously with Giannis being 100% finally after a couple of seasons, but Tyrese Halliburton, if he's passive and kind of wait for his moments, Indiana's going to be in trouble and very fast because this is a Bucks team that got a chip on his shoulder. We remember what happened last year in the first round, and this is a team these are two teams that are familiar with each other. They're in the same division. Mm-hmm. They played each other 5 times. This will be the 18th matchup, including the playoffs. In the last 12 and a half months, when you include the regular season. So, it's to be a fun series. Even if it is on NBA TV, you may have to, check your channel guide to find it at some point during the week.
Better than Amazon, by the way, getting the games next year, so you're going to have to find it almost every time.
There you go.
And pay a monthly fee.
Guys, what's interesting to me about this series is, the stars got to be stars, and you kind of expect Giannis to do Giannis things. The question that I have is, without Lillard, who's going to fill?
Kuzma.
Who's going to fill it, right? Kuzma's streaky. Portis is streaky. You don't have Chris Middleton anymore, a guy you could rely on. You don't have Jrue Holiday anymore. These are guys that Giannis could rely on. I don't know. I wonder how much confidence he has in the rest of these guys to consistently put the ball in the bucket for him to back him up. For the Pacers, I'll say this, guys. Tyrese Halliburton hasn't been on this big a stage since Team USA in the Olympics, and we know that he barely he got more splinters than he got court. So this is a chance for him to remind people that even though he didn't play much in Paris, he was deserving of being on that team. He needs to remind people why.
So, he did nothing. I got an A on a science project.
I knew you were going to say that. So a couple of updates on that. By the way, remember, Bobby Portis is just coming back as of, I think, last week from the 25-game suspension that he had earlier this year for taking those wrong drugs. So we'll see what happens. He had a good game in his first game back. I think Kuzma's the more likely 2 option just because he's streaky and he can get you through one game, so we'll see what happens. But
get you into a game as well as shoot you out of it. That's what I mean.
It's gonna be up to Doc Rivers to tell him when to shoot out. By the way, Lillard was cleared of his thrombosis earlier today. He is off the pain. He is off the blood thinners, but they're gonna ramp him up. It is step 1, but they are gonna ramp him up. So at least he's out of the woods on that. All right. Moving on. Now we can all play that same song. Anybody can win in the NBA playoffs. Anybody has a shot. I mean, the West Finals, we've seen an 8 seed, 5 seed make it over the past 2 seasons. So in the NBA Finals, 8 seed from the East to Heat, the 5 seed from the West, the Mavericks. But three teams this regular season that truly stood out in the National Basketball Association. The 68 and 14 Oklahoma City Thunder, with a record point differential of an average of 12.9 this season. No one's ever done that before. A record. The 64 and 18 Cleveland Cavaliers, who decided to score just a league best 121.9 points per game, and the Boston Celtics, who had a 61 and 21 regular season record. The defending champs, who had just 3 losses this postseason, they never even saw a game 6 in last year's playoffs, let alone a game 7. And a lot of players and a lot of people think that they definitely had that trophy hangover at points this year. And again, let me remind you, the record was 61 and 21. I would love to have that type of hangover. All right. So with that being said, out of these three favorites, let's go in reverse order of regular season. And Anthony, that means you need to tell us who needs to step up for the defending champions.
Well, for the Boston Celtics, and that's my brother's favorite team. It kind of pains me to talk about the Celtics in some kind of a positive light. But the guy I'm looking at is Jaylen Brown, and he ended up playing 63 games this season, 22 points a game. Last year's Eastern Conference Finals and NBA Finals MVP, averaging 20 a game in the final series and Eastern Conference Finals series. A big part as to why the Celtics came into the season has defended champions, and he's also one of the best defenders on the defensive side of basketball. This season, 22 points a game, 5.5 rebounds a game, shooting 46% from the floor and 32% from three. However, since the All-Star break, he's been dealing with a right knee issue that is definitely, if you saw the game between the Knicks and the Celtics a few weeks ago, he didn't play much in the second half of that game, and it was pretty obvious that he was a step slower. The issue, the knee was bothering him. Over the weekend, ESPN reported that he did get some treatment for his right knee. Head coach Joe Mazzulla expects him to be ready for the postseason, which is interesting because they're playing Orlando in the first round, and you think about Paolo Banchero being 100% healthy, and I joked about how good could Atlanta Magic been had everybody been healthy at the same time this season. Injuries kind of really sabotaged their season to an extent. But in the case of Jaylen Brown, they're going to need his offense just as much as they're going to get defense. And need him defensively. He's one of the better defensive players. Orlando does struggle with knocking down shooting the three ball. However, as we saw the other night in their 7-8 matchup against Atlanta, if they get hot from three, they're very hard to beat. And that's a team that shoots very well in mid range and attacks the basket. So they're going to need Jaylen Brown on that side of basketball pretty much more than anything. It's going to be a question of just how healthy he is. I mean, when you're dealing with knee issues, unless you get surgery or have a great offseason, it's going to help you pretty much as long as you keep playing. Down the stretch, the final 8 games, he didn't play more than 30 minutes a game. They tried to manage his minutes a little bit, but it's clear that maybe the extra time off would help Jaylen Brown. Maybe the treatment will help out, but you got to believe that Orlando is going to test him right away and attack him on the defensive side of basketball. So that's the guy who's going to have to step up. He's going to have to show that he's healthy, that he can play, that he can be the Jaylen Brown we saw last year, and the guy that many people, we mentioned Team USA, many people felt he should have been on the team, included last year. But again, it's going to be whether or not that knee can hold up. If it can't hold up, and you're putting more pressure on Jason Tatum and a healthy Kristaps Porzingis, and of course that duo has held his own, and the Celtics has been the Celtics. They're going to need the other All-Star to be part of that equation, and otherwise, it's going to be really hard to see them repeat as champions if they even miss one key player, let alone a multi-time All-Star who was just as good on both and one of the best two-way players in the league.
By the way, it'll be nice to see Jason Tatum trying to make up his Olympic stub. Oh wait, he was on the team last year. He was actually
Oh,
playing on the team last year. So
oh,
you were talking about Tyrese Halliburton trying to make up for his lack of playing time in the Olympics. Jason Tatum might be Exhibit A in that boat.
Wow.
So Jay, the Cavaliers have high expectations now, the highest they've ever been post LeBron James. So, who is the player that needs to step up for those expectations to be met?
It's Darius Garland. Played 75 games this year, averaged a little under 31 minutes per game, 20.6 points per game, 2.9 boards, 6.7 assists, shooting splits, 47.2 from the floor, 40.1 from beyond the arcs on 7.1 per game, 87.8 from the stripe on 3.4 per game. He was second in the team in scoring, first in assists. Now, look, Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell form one of the better backcourts in the NBA. Both are multiple-time All-Stars, including this season, who can score from all levels, set up their teammates, and can be counted on in the clutch. But while Mitchell is a proven playoff performer, he averaged 29.6 points per game on 47.6% from the floor, 35.4 from three on 8.2 a game, and 81.5 from the line on 6.5 attempts per game shooting in last year's playoffs in 38.1 minutes per game to go along with 5.4 rebounds, 4.7 assists, and 1.3 steals. His partner in crime is still looking for that signature playoff run. Garland averaged just 15.7 points per game. He shot just 42.7% from the floor, just 35.2% from three on 5.9 attempts per game. Shot 81% from the line, but it only took 1.8 free throw attempts per game in last year's playoffs. He averaged all of that in 35.1 minutes per game, just 3.6 boards, 5.8 assists, 1.1 steals as the Cavs went out in 5 games in the Eastern Conference semis to the Celtics, who they'll likely see again in the East Finals if everything goes chalk. And over his last 2 postseasons, he's shooting just 43% from the floor, 36% from beyond the arc, and he struggled with the added physicality that often accompanies the NBA's second season. Something he's likely to have to deal with again, as the Knicks would likely loom in the Eastern semis, and soft is not a word used to describe them. The major concern for the Cavs was that Garland looked like he would be coming into the playoffs on a really bad post-All-Star game shooting slump. He came into his last game of the regular season against the Knicks at MSG, shooting just 40.5% from the floor and 34% from beyond the arc since the All-Star break, after shooting 49.8% from the floor and 43.1% from beyond the arc before the mid-February pause. So, for the Cavs, the performance that Garland turned in on April 11th, leading the Cavs back from 23 points down to beat the Knicks 108-102, is cause for hope. Garland put up a 26.13 assist double-double, knocking down 10 of 17 from the floor, though only 1 of 5 from three, and 5 of 7 from the line. 19 of the 26 came in the second half on 8 of 9 from the floor, with 13 of the 19 coming in the fourth quarter on a perfect 6 for 6 from the floor, including his only made 3 of the night, as he almost outscored the Knicks all by himself 13-16. This was on the heels of a 28-point night 3 days earlier against the Bulls, where he also shot 10 of 17 from the floor, though much better from three, 6 of 10, as the Cavs won going away 135-113. Now, what's noticeable about both performances is that Garland did it without Mitchell suiting up for Cleveland, so the focus of the opposing defenses was on him, and he rose to the challenge. Garland has proven to be a very clutch performer for the East #1 seed this season, and he very much has a case to win the NBA's Clutch Player of the Year award. Yes, it's a real award. And Friday's win over the Knicks may have cemented it. He came into the Friday night game shooting 53% from the floor and 45% from three late in the fourth quarter of close games this season. Those 13 points in the fourth quarter against the Knicks gave Garland at least 10 points in the final 12 minutes of 10 games. It wasn't the first time that he took the Knicks apart in the fourth quarter, as he lit them up for 15 in the final frame back on October 28, also at MSG. The Cavs point guard wants the ball in crunch time, saying, quote, "It's crunch time, and they look to me to handle the ball and make plays. It's truly an honor, especially with the team that we have and the talent we have, them wanting me to have the ball and to make the right plays. It means a lot to me. The question is, can he be that guy?" the one we saw in those last two games when the Cavs postseason begins over the weekend. And there's a very legit reason why it is a question. One of the larger issues facing Garland is, as I briefly mentioned earlier, is that playoff basketball is more physical, and that's where Garland has problems, especially on defense, where no one will confuse him with Dyson Daniels, which I think leads to some of his struggles on offense. Garland can't hide on defense against either the Knicks or the Celtics, and both teams know it and will relentlessly hunt him in the pick and roll to create mismatches for their best offensive players. Can the 6'1 Garland take the punishment that comes with fighting through the screens and still be effective as Robin to Mitchell's Batman? If Darius Garland can't step up under what are sure to be trying circumstances and make opponents pay like he did against the Bulls and the Knicks to close out the regular season, then the Cavs are in trouble, not just in potential series against the Knicks and the Celtics, but maybe even against the winner of the Heat-Hawks play-in game.
Maybe not against the winner. We'll see
I
what
said
happens,
maybe.
Big baby.
Maybe.
Big baby. I think the one thing I know we talked about usually, like in terms of stars being stars, but the one good thing about the Cavs is you have DeAndre Hunter and Ty Jerome and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. Like, if you were to say, can you win a game without your top two players scoring? That's team number one on my list that I would think would be that way. And that's the reason why the Cavs, because all of their other players are hitting career highs, including Jerome, who should be sixth man of the year. And I think this team is going to be in very good shape. Good shape.
Here's the thing, Rabbi, and the reason I mentioned that you can't say definitively that it won't be an issue against whoever they play.
No, absolutely.
Out of that game is because we all know that if it's the Hawks, Trae Young, the Hawks and Trae Young are going to look to put him in matchups, and Young can conceivably take him apart. If it's the Heat, they're going to look to run actions to get him guarding Hero, and Hero will take him apart as well.
That is true, but I think Anthony told me the other night, and just considering his play against the Magic, my stock is tremendously down right now on Trae Young. If I had Trae Young stock, I would be selling it on the black market.
Fair.
I understand that completely. Again, anything can happen in the postseason, but
because they can't hide him on defense, that's the thing.
They can't, but I truly think that he's going to need to be that to get to past Boston. Definitely. Mm-hmm. Okay. 68-14. What can I say? The Oklahoma City Thunder have gone from a young upstart to a beast in just 2 years. But remember, they did not win. They did not win as the 1 seed last year. They got to 6 against the Dallas Mavericks and looked pretty pedestrian after that going into that series. But it's not going to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Jalen Williams that's going to be the key to this team moving on far in this postseason. It's going to be Chet Holmgren, who has had a history of injuries. Obviously, he missed the entire first season of his career. In the first game of the season, he went for 25 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 blocks, 2 steals. They were 8-1 in his first 9 games. Then he got injured. Of course he got injured, because that's what Chet Holmgren, unfortunately, has been known to do. But when Chet Holmgren came back, he was pretty outstanding. He had solid numbers through most of his games after being cleared into action early February, 14.3 points, 7.7 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game. But again, he's a little inconsistent at times. You can see that from time to time when he does a double-double, like in his sleep, and there's times when he can go for 5 points and 6 boards, and you wouldn't know which you're going to find out. Final 5 games in the season, 17.6 points per game, 6.4 rebounds, and 2.2 blocks per game, on 50% shooting in the floor and 47.6% shooting from distance. That is all good. However, there is a reason why Chet Holmgren is going to be big, and I bring to you Exhibit B, the twin tower who is going to join him in the postseason, known as Isaiah Hartenstein, the former Knick. This is a combination that you haven't seen a lot together because they haven't been together a lot, but they've only played 316 minutes together on the floor at the same time. Their offensive rating, 122.9. Their defensive rating, 109.4. They've outscored their opponents by 96 points in that short amount of time that they were on together. It's not a gigantic sample. There have been 39 of their Thunder two-man combinations that have played more together. But these two players right here, you put them together, they could be a nightmare for teams, especially you're not going to probably put them together in the beginning of the game. You're not going to put them together at the end of the game unless you know you're going to get that offense. You're going to put them together in the middle of the game when you're going up against the B units out there. And you have a B unit out there. You see these two towers in the middle. I'm going to hope to just get the foul and go to the line. Thank you very much. It's a very tough team, and I think, but obviously Hartenstein, we know what he's done in the postseason last year for the Knicks, but if Chet Holmgren does that next to Isaiah Hartenstein, the West is going to be the Thunder's pretty much no matter what you put up against them, because this is just two pieces to the jigsaw puzzle that is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are as dominant of a team that we've pretty much seen in NBA history. They just need to get it through in the second part of the season, and I would not be surprised if that happened.
Yeah, but there was a lot of talk about the Knicks losing kind of grit from last year. I talked about Divichenko earlier, but Hartenstein, I mean, what he did with the Knicks for the Knicks last season, there's a coincidence that the Knicks went from one of the top rebounding teams in the league as far as paint protection and point and keeping guys from scoring around the basket to near the bottom of the league. And Isaiah Hartenstein, he's added obviously the rebound and shot blocking, but he's a great playmaker when he does have the ball in his hands and can get his own basket. So that's a lot of things that Hartenstein brought to Oklahoma City Thunder team that's already got SGA and got a slew of weapons behind him. But I think the intangibles that he brought to this team as well, and also a little experience, obviously being in the postseason, Hartenstein, but also kind of his EBQ personality. I think it's really meshed this young up and coming team very well. And it was just, I mean, it was a snooze fest for the Thunder to try and get to the second half of the season after the All-Star break. And obviously people talked about how they didn't get enough attention. Well, they're going to get plenty of attention in the playoffs, obviously, because they are, without question, the heavy favorite to come out of the Western Conference because of what they've been able to do the last two seasons.
And probably to win it all, too, by the way. I really think there are 7 players on this team that scored double digits. There are 5 players of this team that have gotten 6 players on this team that have got more than 3.9 rebounds a game. There's just no weak link on this whole team. And remember, Alex Caruso is coming off the bench, and we love our white chocolate on this team by far. We are big Alex Caruso fans.
Williams is going to take issue with you loaning his nickname to somebody else. All right.
It's been a long time. Give it up. Okay.
I'll tell you this though. I mean, I have never seen a team. I mean, talk about the process yielding, exactly what you expect. Sam Presti's a freaking genius. I mean, this team, if you think about it, number 1 in the NBA in number 1 in the NBA in defensive rating, 107.5. Number 3 in offensive rating, 120.3. Number 1 in net rating, plus 12.8. Third in points allowed, just 107.6. Fourth in points per game at 120.5. I mean, these guys are absolutely ridiculous. I mean, yes, there's plenty of teams in the West that can potentially maybe give them a series. I don't know, guys. I don't see any of them that can knock them out. I just don't. They are that complete of a team, especially if Holmgren's healthy, and they don't even need him to play like an all-star to be able to run the table, at least in the West.
The problem is, the only thing I'm going to say is you don't know what you have until you actually get to that level. And last year, that team did take some licks in that Maverick series. So I've been always accused of ringing the bell immediately for a team, and just watch out because I don't see a team that that matches up well with them. But the West is a gauntlet,
Mhm.
and someone's going to grab the Infinity Stone. And unlike the East, I think there's a lot of teams that could do that in the West who are capable of doing that in the West. I wouldn't be surprised if the Warriors did it, even though they are the seventh seed.
Hey,
They're
it's
going to
gonna,
be favored in
you
there.
know,
It'll be fun.
just like in the movies, Rabbi, it's going to take all of the Avengers to knock out Thanos.
Yeah.
Yes.
By the way, quick thought on Warriors Rockets. Isn't it fun to have Dylan Brooks and Draymond Green in the same series? Uh, I, I,
Mm.
I got three bags
Hey,
of popcorns waiting for
you
those
know
games.
what? That it's kind of cool that the Warriors are. I mean, the Warriors are always fun in the playoffs, but now that they've got playoff Jimmy as Robin to Steph Batman, I mean, come on, this is going to be fun.
And don't sleep on the Rockets. I know people are like,
Oh,
Warriors, do not sleep on what the Rockets have done. Their beginning of the year and their end of the year have been amazing.
They
And
could play
again,
defense.
most improved team in the
Absolutely.
NBA.
the most improved team in the NBA technically is the Pistons, but this team is pretty close to where they are playoff wise. Okay. We are talking about coaching to end the night, and we kind of teased this earlier. Here we go. I've heard that coaching. The NFL. When it comes to the NFL, the words coaching stands for not for long. It's been said all the time. And now for the NBA, we have a new phrase for that. NBA stands for when it comes to coaching future. Nobody asked. Yeah, yeah, with the firing of Mark Malone last Tuesday, along with GM Calvin Booth, the Denver Nuggets followed a shocking NBA trend and turned it up to 16, the number of playoff victories Nikola Jokic's crew had 2 years ago on their way to a title. Now, when team president Josh Kroenke, son of Stan Kroenke, America's luckiest owner, proving the fact that you really don't have to be good or do that much to win a title in two sports, remember he also owns the LA Rams, Kroenke said the move was done with the intention of giving our group the best chance of competing for the 2025 NBA championship. And now, here at On the Sports Lines, I'm going to go over the list that gives you the best chance to win a championship. Do you have a star player? Yes, Nikola Jokic, one of the best in the world. Do you have a championship core? Yes, might be a jury that's still out with that, but sure. Do you have a great home court advantage? Absolutely. You play in Denver, it's the mile high city. Do you have the continuity of a coaching staff of more than 2 weeks going into the playoffs? We'll get back to you on that one. Yes, there are many reports on how Malone and Booth were both goners before the end of the season and how they argued with each other. And for this point of the story, that's irrelevant. You can make your opinions on what would happen after the season. But given that David Adelman, son of Rick, by the way, all the accolades in the world, give him all the accolades in the world that he's now the interim head coach. But nothing beats the experience of having one of the longest tenured coaches behind the bench, even if it was for one more run. If the players couldn't deal with Malone anymore, that's stupid. Suck it up for 2 to 6 weeks. If the owners wanted this 100%, of course, they're owners. What are they supposed to do? Make logical decisions and actually pay attention to the sport that they own? Nah. So whatever. Now, even if the Nuggets beat the Clippers in their first round series, it's solid. They're favored. But the forecast for this team is kind of scary. You're doing a disservice to your team's playoff run if you fire Mike Malone right before the end of the season, no matter who's responsible. Now, do we single out Denver for starting an alarming trend this season? No, we don't, because the team that started it is the Memphis Grizzlies, who are currently playing for their lives on Friday night to play in versus the Dallas Mavericks. They waited a whole 9 games before the end of the season before making their move. See? Progress. Now, an evaluation of the 10 games, because that includes the play that they played on Tuesday night. Here's the 10 games that interim coach Tomas Lucello had to show the audience how much it means when you fire their coach. A 4-6 record, including the play-in game appearance that you fired your coach so quickly to try to avoid, and a critical mistake late in the game on a 5-second call when the Grizz could not inbound the ball in time. Guess what you need in that situation? Yeah, an effing full-time coach who's been the main voice for more than 10 games. As faces a Dallas team who just beat another team who fired their head coach in mid-season in the term of the Sacramento Kings. Now, they did it only 31 games into the season, so let's not give them shit there. But they are a disarray with a record-breaking, well, the Memphis Grizzlies are in disarray. They have a record-breaking Thunder team awaiting on the other side if they even win that game. By the way, the Kings general manager, back to them, Monty McNair, he got showed the door yesterday after that loss, and he said now, apparently in the media, that he didn't want to fire Brown in season, according to those reports. Josh Kroenke, back to the Nuggets, also said yesterday that he needed to be better in the firing, and neither of them deserved it. Those sponsors on Sesame Street are sponsored by the letters P, R, B, and S, by the way. Yep, PRBS. Now, for the real problems, the coaching trees are truly not for long at all. And it's kind of annoying for me. There are only 3 coaches now who have been coaching for 10 years in the NBA. That's Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, and Eric Spoelstra. Popovich may be gone due to health issues, by the way, at the end of the year. You know who the 4th longest tenured coach of the NBA is? That's Tom Thibodeau, who has been coaching for a grand total of 5 years. What a drop off from one to the other. You can't fire the players, I know. But let me tell you the most ridiculous of facts, well, to end this rant, and get ready to do the math here. Let's go over the teams who have won the title or have come close and made the NBA Finals. Mike Malone, 2023 champ, gone. Ime Udoka, 2022 runner-up, gone, albeit for different reasons, I know. 2021 champ Mike Budenholzer, gone. The Bucks are on the second coach since their firing. Budenholzer went to Phoenix and was subsequently fired this season after 1 year. By the way, the runner-up that season was Monty Williams, and he was fired one more time since then. So he's been fired by 2 teams. The Suns will be now on their 3rd coach in 3 years, and Frank Vogel, coach of the 2020 champion Lakers, was one of the coaches in that group that was fired as well. Do you got all of that? That test is coming later. Pens down. Maybe with all of this, we should just rename the NBA to the NBS. Nobody survives. Anthony.
Wow. Man.
The Nuggets firing is kind of a shocker. And look, when you're in a situation where you have to choose between the coach and the GM, you'll probably wait till after the postseason before you make a decision.
They made the decision. They chose neither.
Yeah, but they could have waited after the playoff run to see what happens before choosing neither. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the Nuggets, it was just obviously a tale of 2 different philosophies between GM and coach. And you look at the Nuggets, they lost some number of key players from that championship season 2 years ago. They lost KCP, they lost Brown, they lost Green, they lost a number of key guys, and obviously Michael Malone dealing with different lineouts, trying to play younger players. There was some issues among the players themselves. There was obviously disgruntlement on the sideline. Jokic kind of yelling at his teammates about the defensive effort. Aaron Gordon was trying to call a huddle in one game on a court, and Jamal Murray basically ignored him. So I mean, it was just a situation where it was affecting it was kind of having a trickle-down effect with the rest of the organization, and they just decided to make the decision now rather than hold off until after the season was done. As far as the Grizzlies, I said it 2 years ago. Well, 2 years ago, when the Lakers knocked them out of the first round, that this organization had an issue with team culture and kind of accountability. And you see it from John Morant's constant behavior problems that's been well documented. The coaching as well. And that was like, well, if you're gonna make that coaching change. You should have did that 2 seasons ago when you had one of the best records and flamed out completely because of the total lack of immaturity in that locker room. But the NBA has just become a league where patience is not exactly a virtue anymore. I mean, you're seeing championship quality coaches getting canned, and already we're talking about what happens if the Knicks bow out in the first round early to a really good Pistons team. It's Tom Thibodeau next on that coaching chopping block. Um, Look, it's become it's similar to the NFL. We see this mostly with the NFL as far as a lack of patience, as far as head coaches and success. So, wow, that's all I can say. Basically saying, like,
Shit
it
show.
was like I said, it was just a shit show to see a coach get fired with 3 games left in the regular season, or 9 games in the case of the Grizzlies, and it's just something that we may unfortunately see more and more of in the next couple of years because the window opportunity of winning gets shorter and shorter because of the CBA, because of the constant roster turnover from year to year. But wow, like I said, it left me kind of speechless just to even see these things happening. But like just right before the playoffs, you don't have much of a leash anymore if you're a head coach.
I'm not gonna. You guys have covered the whole Taylor Jenkins Grizzlies thing. To me, that organization has been a walking, trash talking, basketball playing Charlie Foxtrot of the highest order, pretty much since Ja Morant joined them. So that I have felt that team needed to get blown up a long time ago. Um, who knows what I don't have high hopes for whoever they manage to bring in because Ja Morant seems to get more and more childish and immature by the year, regressing instead of growing up. Um, but as I said to you guys on text when the story about Malone's firing broke on April 10th, I believe my exact words were, "What the actual f?" When with the link to the story in the Athletic, you guys know where I stand on these types of firing, and this one seemed to make absolutely zero sense. I mean, at first glance, it looked like a knee-jerk reaction by an owner to a late season slump. Denver had lost 4 in a row and 13 of 23 with the playoffs looming. And while I'm still not crazy about decisions like this, the more I read, the more I understood, and the more I could see the reason behind the move, even if I don't necessarily philosophically and in principle agree with it. When there is dysfunction surrounding your best player, 3-time NBA MVP Nikola Jokic, your head coach, and your GM, and the frustration between them threatens to fracture the team, the coaching staff, and the rest of the organization just when everyone needs to be coming together, then yeah, a move probably needs to be made. I have to say, though, I was surprised that both Michael Malone and Calvin Booth were shown the door, even after I learned that the relationship between the two had been strained for going on almost 5 years now, which would include the Nuggets championship season of 2023. And apparently, despite team president Josh Kroenke, yes, owner of Stan, son of owner Stan,
Owner of Stan, yes.
son of owner Stan, doing everything he could to try and repair the Malone Booth relationship, things had apparently gotten to the point where he realized, as one team source said, no one was going to win this Cold War between a coach and a GM who had diametrically opposing philosophies on how the roster should be used. As another Nuggets source said, quote, the stuff off the court was even more worse than the stuff on the court. Everyone felt the weight of it. Apparently, the rationale for the moves was that A, it would remove much of the negativity that hung like a very large dark cloud over the entire organization that team officials struggled to manage. And two, it would give Dave Adelman, as you guys said, son of longtime NBA coach Rick Adelman, and an assistant under Malone for 8 years, some runway to get the team back on track while also giving the Crankies a chance to see if he'd be a viable candidate to take the job for real come the offseason. They were also apparently, as you guys noted, influenced by the Grizzlies' recent firing of Coach Taylor Jenkins, whose logic for the move was that a reset with less problematic leaders ahead of the postseason might spark a positive change in the team and its play. With that as the backdrop, I can kind of understand the need to make a move like this, even if I have to wonder why it took this long to make it. It would seem that Jokic has been unhappy with the dynamic for a while now. And if preserving Jokic's prime years, the rest of them, was the major reason for this decision, why wasn't it made sooner? Especially if, according to team and league sources, Malone's level of support in the locker room had practically reached rock bottom by mid-March, as was Jokic's state of frustration with the state of things. I've often said that no matter how successful a coach is, sometimes the players stop hearing his voice, even if it's not ripping them a new one, as Malone was prone to doing every now and then. Edelman's calm and steady demeanor is 180 degrees in the opposite direction of Malone's. And sometimes that's really the only major change that's needed, especially if the new voice, which since Edelman's been there for 8 years is the same as the old voice, sort of, has the support of the team's key players like Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. Will it result in a lengthy playoff run? I guess we'll find out, though, as I'm sure you surmised from my Nuggets Clippers segment, it won't be easy. Then again, sometimes all it takes is for the weight that's been on your chest all season to be removed, allowing you to exhale and breathe easy once again.
Again, yes, I've seen the reports, but again, 3 games before the end of the season is
That's
not
what I said. Why did it take this long if apparently
Yes.
this has been brewing
Yeah,
bare minimum
it's
6
not
months?
ideal.
Come on.
It's not ideal. In that situation, you stop the car right before you go off the cliff, and then once the playoffs are done, considering you've won a title basically like this, you push it off the cliff. And again, you're going to hear many different stories from many different ways of how it actually went down, and we'll never probably know 100% how this actually went down. So we'll see what happens.
Netflix, get on this. You've been good at documentaries. I want to see a documentary behind this Denver Nuggets fiasco.
I feel like Jokic would never actually comment and just be like, "I need to go tend to my horses every single time," which is perfectly fine. I would, if I were him, I would tend to my horses all the time too, considering on how great he is out there.
What
Okay.
I found interesting, Rabbi, was that he knew the move was coming. He had been informed by Josh Kroenke that the move was happening before.
Oh, good. That's what you should be doing.
Not that his opinion was asked. He said Josh told me about the decision, so I was aware of it before it actually broke. So that's interesting, and that shows you how much gravitas Jokic actually has with.
Well, he should. He should.
Good.
He also has the ring to give you that final bit of gravitas out there. Okay. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, Anthony, you know how WrestleMania is this weekend, and how Shawn Michaels is considered to be Mr. WrestleMania as his nickname?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am the recently crowned Mr. Dad Joke out there, Steven Rabinowitz. The first ever Mr. Dad Joke to actually have the title without a child. So thank you. Give me my flowers. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines is where you can see us on demand. Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines is where you can see us live. And I'm not forcing you to do these things, but if you go to, and I'm going to balance it out for the sake of this, if you go to Twitter, Jay.
Our handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show, including tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I've posted a link to a pretty cool story by The Athletic's Gabby Herzig about what it's like to play Augusta National the day after the Masters. If you didn't know, and I did not, there is a Masters Media Lottery, and the winner gets to play in the Monday golf outing on the same course that, less than 24 hours prior, was witness to Rory McIlroy's victory, which got him his first green jacket and completed a career Grand Slam. Check it out. It's worth the read, even if you're not a hardcore golf fan.
Again, Rory McIlroy is basically why I'm romantic about sports from time to time. I will never watch a golf tournament just like I did that week. By the way, a couple of things for Congratulations to Sam Rosen, who Anthony mentioned before is now officially retired after tonight. Congratulations to his successor, Kenny Albert, who will be the MSG play-by-play man starting next year. We've had him on the show before. We love him. We love him. He'll actually be called the Stanley Cup Finals this year too. And congratulations to a man who will be retiring after week 1 of the college football season next year. Lee Corso is retiring after 38 years, and he'll be making his final headgear pick in week 1. So
not going to be the same without hearing him go, "Not so fast, my friends,"
and putting up a ridiculous mascot head and possibly being the worst enemy to Uga in every way, shape, or form out there. Okay, we'll see you next Thursday night. It'll be our NFL draft show. We will be live as the draft is happening. Get your popcorn ready. That'll be at 8 p.m. I might stop the draft if the Giants come anywhere near Shador Sanders. So be aware, gentlemen. I will see you with my friends and Joe Tafaro as well, who is confirmed for the show. We will be all together next Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Please join us, my friends. Until now, happy Easter, happy WrestleMania weekend. Good night.
Good night, everyone.